Treat your time like money. Treat your time like money and always ask, how can you best spend it for maximum happiness? How can you spend your time in such a way that it gives you the greatest payoff, that it gives you the greatest amount of satisfaction in life? The 10th key to balance is very simple. It's to do more of one thing, you must do less of another. To do more of one thing, you must do less of another. So here's my question. What do you have to do more of, and what do you have to do less of in order to get your life back in balance? And when do you start? When do you start doing more of one thing and less of another, or less of one thing and more of another? Remember, as we said before, setting priorities in getting balance means setting posteriorities as well. Number 11. Remember that love is the most important thing in the world. Love is not just a happy, emotional thing that you get occasionally. Love is absolutely central to mental and emotional well-being. In fact, one psychologist once said, everything we do in life is either to get more love or to compensate for lack of love. So here are the keys to dealing with love. First of all, accept that love is not peripheral, love is central. Make your family central to your life, not peripheral. Put it in the middle of your life. Plan your whole life around your family. B, treat your spouse, who is the most important love relationship in your life, with special care, which means with kindness, with courtesy, with consideration. Treat your spouse as though he or she were the most important person in the world, because in most cases, he or she is. And number 11C is the universal maxim of Immanuel Kant, which is the question you ask in considering everything, which is, what kind of a family would my family be if everyone in it were just like me? Try to see your family through your own eyes. Try to look at your family from the perspective of how would they act or feel or behave if I treated them the way they treat me, if they treated me the way I treat them. And if you always practice the golden rule with your family, you'll be amazed at how much more sensitive you are to the things you can do or not do that make a difference. Now, number 12, here's the key to balance. I travel 120 to 150 days a year, and people ask me this all the time, and here it is. The key to balance? Do just two things. Especially when your children are growing up, do just two things. And the two things are work and family. It's as simple as that. You see, the major mistake that we make is when we're growing up, we take on an enormous number of things to do, but what happens when we get married and have children and responsibilities, we take on more and more and more, but we don't drop anything off. What you have to do is you have to put all of these other things aside. Now, in doing just two things, number 13 is work all the time you work. Work all the time you work. This is the key to balance. Work all the time you work. Now, here's what happens. Too many people spend too much of their time fooling around at work. What you have to do is you have to put more of yourself into your work. Because every minute that you spend fooling around at work, socializing and wasting time, which causes your work to accumulate, causes you to have to take it home in the evenings and on the weekends, is time that you're taking away from your family. So work all the time you work. When you go to work, work 100% full blast all the time. Don't let anybody waste your time or detract time from your work, which brings us to number 14. The other part of balance is when you're with your family, be there 100% of the time. Don't be there physically with the rest of your body watching television, looking out the window, talking on the telephone, reading the newspapers, and so on. When you're with your family, practice focused attention and be there 100% of the time. Be right there, if you like, in their face. Do you know, it's an interesting statistic, but according to the American PTA Association, the average parent spends less than 30 minutes per week in one-on-one, face-to-face interaction with their child. You wonder why we have problems with some of our children? It's because parents don't spend time with them. Number 15 is cut back on all the things that cut into family time. Cut back on newspapers. Remember, when you read a newspaper, when one of your members of your family is there and wants to communicate with you, what you're saying is the newspaper is more important than you are. Cut back on television. Cut back on radio. Cut back on outside activities and aimless socializing, because everything that you do that is one of these things is time that you're taking away from the most important people in your life. Number 16, spend unbroken chunks of time with the most important people in your life. In order to learn to love someone, in order to get really close to someone, you've got to spend a lot of time with them. You can't do it sporadically. I often recommend that people take car trips where you can sit in the car with a person for an hour or 2 or 3 hours. It's amazing what you learn spending those unbroken chunks of time. Now here's a rule. Spend 60 minutes every day with your spouse. Not talking about work, not talking about money, but talking about family and life and the future. Now here's the most important rule of all. It's the foundation rule of this whole session. It's the most important thing I've ever learned in balance. It's this. It's quantity of time at home and it's quality of time at work. It's quantity of time at home and it's the quality of time you spend at work. And here's the key. Don't mix them up. Most people make the mistake of mixing them up and try to spend quantities at work and quality at home, and it doesn't work. As a child psychologist said recently, I never met a child in trouble who said, I wish my parents had spent more quality time with me. Number 18, remember, you're always free to choose. You're always free to choose. You're always free to set priorities. You're always free to choose the order or the sequence of events. Is that you always choose what's most important to you. So the most important thing of all is in balancing home and family, balancing the most important people in your life with your work. Always put them first. Always put them on the top. And remember, the whole purpose of time management is this. The purpose of time management is to enable you to get more things done on the outside so that you have more time to spend with the most important people in your life. The one thing that makes you unique from every other human being in the world is the way you think. It's the quality of your mind, and especially the way you think about your time and your life. And if you think more effectively, if you think more positive, if you think more constructively about yourself, your time, your life, your activities, your relationships, your work, and so on, you actually improve them all. So in this session, I want to talk to you about the qualities of thinking of truly superior men and women and show you how you can develop them on an ongoing basis as you go about your day-to-day life. The first thing I want to talk about is what is called the development of a personal philosophy of time. A personal philosophy of time. Now, personal philosophy of time also means a personal philosophy of life. What is life? What does it mean? What does it stand for? And in life, there are two basic worldviews, and basically they're at opposite ends of the pole, and sometimes we fall in the middle. But the first worldview is a benevolent worldview. People with a benevolent worldview are those who have a positive mental attitude, generally speaking, toward themselves and their life. They believe in their own potential. They believe in love and life and beauty. They believe in growing to the realization of their full capabilities. They believe that life is pretty good and that they can have a major impact. They can make a contribution and do something substantial with their lives. People with a benevolent worldview are the movers and shakers and the builders of all of time. Now, the other type of people are those who have a malevolent worldview. These are people who have a negative mental attitude, if you like, and they have, first of all, a negative mental attitude toward themselves. They have a negative mental attitude toward other people, toward the world. They see injustice and oppression. They see unhappiness and misery. They see unfairness and people having a hard life. They have a tendency to be angry and to have low self-esteem, but always a malevolent worldview requires someone or something else to blame, someone or something to criticize, something to be down on. That's why you find that people with a malevolent worldview are always in contra-opposition, or if you like, in conflict with people with a benevolent worldview. In order for you to achieve your potential, remember the most important people, the most productive people, the most creative people are always those who have a benevolent, positive, constructive worldview, and that's your goal. Now, the second part of a philosophy of time management is to take the long view. This is so important, but Dr. Edward Banfield of Harvard University studied success for years and years in this context. He said, what are the characteristics of people that cause them to move up socioeconomically in the course of their lifetime? What are the predictors of upward social evolution? And what he found out was that long-time perspective was the critical factor, that this is an attitude. And people with long-time perspective, as we mentioned briefly before, are those who take a look at where they are now and where they want to be in 20 years. And they make sure that everything that they're doing today is going to help them in the long term. They are willing to work hard today knowing that the payoff will come much, much later. And as you go up socioeconomically, you find that people's time perspective stretches out further and further. So develop the long view. Now, when we say developing the long view, we mean that people with the long view are willing to sacrifice in the short term for benefits in the long term. They're willing to study and prepare and plan and work. They're willing to practice the law of accumulation, which says that every great achievement is an accumulation of hundreds and thousands of efforts that a person puts in that nobody ever sees, but a person is willing to do it, realizing that the payoff will be tremendous. Taking a time management course or program and learning these things is an investment of time with a payoff that can last for a long time. Now, the third key, which comes out of the long view, is the ability to delay gratification. Economists agree that the number one reason why people or even economies fail is because of the inability to delay gratification. They want to spend all of their time, all of their money now. They want to have fun and do what is fun and easy rather than what is hard and necessary. W. Clement Stone said, if you cannot save money, then the seeds of greatness are not in you. If you cannot save money, then the seeds of greatness are not in you. If you cannot delay gratification and engage in short-term pain for long-term gain, then the seeds of greatness are not in you. One of the most valuable things that we can teach our children and teach our staff is to think in the long term. All of us, over the course of our lives, want to develop character, and character has been defined several ways. One definition I like is that character is the ability to follow through on a resolution after the enthusiasm with which the resolution was made has passed. So taking this course, by the way, you will make a lot of decisions and commitments and resolutions. The true measure of character is whether or not you have the capacity to follow through. Character, in effect, is self-discipline in action. Character is self-discipline in action. You can tell how much character you have by how willing you are to discipline yourself to make the sacrifices that are necessary in the short term to have a great life in the long term. Now, once you've done this, number 5 is to take the short view. A key part of time management is to take the short view, which means to measure out your time in minutes. We find the most productive people in our society, the most important, the most prominent, are those who are the most fastidious about their time management. They measure out their time in 10-minute chunks like accountants and lawyers and doctors, whereas unsuccessful people measure out their times in half days and full days and weeks. So take the short view. Be fastidious about your time. Following that is know where your time goes. Know where your time goes. Take the time to think. Know where your time goes so that you can ask yourself if this is how you want to spend your time. Analyze it. Keep a list of how you spend your time. Look and ask yourself all the time, is this consistent with what I want to do and what I want to accomplish? And number 7 is learn how to say no. Just say no if a particular activity does not contribute to the highest value use of your time. Just say no if something is not helping you. Use the techniques of delay in order to gain time to think about whether or not you want to do something. One of the best techniques I've ever used and discovered is what is called the 24-hour technique. No matter what anybody wants you to do, ask for 24 hours to think about it. Think about it overnight. Think about it over the weekend. Think about how you're going to say no, and just say no to anything that does not contribute to accomplishing things that are important to you. Now, an 8th key in developing a philosophy of time management is to remember that time equals money. Time equals money. If a person asks you for a certain amount of time, or if an activity takes a certain amount of time, ask yourself, how much money would you be willing to exchange for the successful completion of that activity? If you want to earn a certain amount of money, ask yourself, how much of your time are you willing to spend? How much of your money are you willing to contribute? Successful people always look at time and money, and they realize that the two are interchangeable. Now, here's another important point. You can invest time to get more money. You can invest money to get more time. And time and money put together equal happiness. Happiness, or life, we can call it life, but basically happiness is a better word. So always exchange time for happiness. Always exchange money for happiness. Always realize that they're interchangeable and that you can either invest them or you can spend them. If you invest them, you'll have a return. If you spend them, then they're gone forever. And this brings us to the ninth key in developing a philosophy, which is that you need to look at everything that you're expected to do based on your hourly rate. If your desired hourly rate is 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or $50 an hour, then you ask yourself, is what I am doing now paying my hourly rate? Is what I'm doing now worth my hourly rate? Or ask yourself this way, when you're reading the newspaper or watching television or sitting around socializing, would you pay another person your hourly rate to engage in this activity? How much would you pay per hour to have a person watch television for you? When you're watching television, you should ask yourself, how much would I pay per hour to watch this television show? The average person doesn't realize, but the amount of time that they spend watching television is in itself, if it were used to upgrade your skills and abilities, it's in itself enough to make you rich over the course of your working lifetime. A television can cost you thousands of dollars, even tens of thousands of dollars a year, if you don't think about the fact that when you're watching television, you're not doing something that is increasing your productivity. And this brings us to number 10, one of the most important of all laws in developing a philosophy. It's the law of comparative advantage. The law of comparative advantage is an economic law that says that you should always hire or pay someone else to do something that can be done if they can be paid a lower hourly rate than the rate that you desire. For instance, if your goal is to earn $25 an hour and it costs $6 an hour to mow your lawn or wash your car, you should always hire someone to do that. You should always pay someone else at a lower hourly rate so that you can free up your time to perform higher value activities. All of companies and organizations are designed around this. The individual starts off doing everything, and then as a company becomes busier and more successful, what the individual does is they hire people to do lower value activities so you can spend more time doing higher value activities. Don't ever do $5 an hour work if you want to earn $25 an hour. Don't ever work on low value activities if you want to earn the results that come from completing high value activities. Remember, time is the one irreplaceable, indispensable resource of accomplishment. Is that all accomplishment, all achievement requires time. And if you use it on something of low value, it's gone forever, it's perishable, and you don't have it to work on things that are really important to you. Number 11, remember that time management is a lifelong skill. It's a lifelong commitment. It's not something that you learn and that you put aside. Time management is a discipline, but it's like physical exercise. It's like eating. It's like sleeping. It's like hygiene, brushing your teeth. You have to work on it continuously. Every single day you have to get up and you have to think consciously about how you're going to manage your time, how you're going to use it today. Remember, time is life. So you have to think continually about how you're going to use your life more effectively. Number 12, lead by example. One of the characteristics of leaders is that leaders lead by example. Leaders have a tendency to look upon themselves and be aware of the impact that their activities and what they're doing is having on others. Leaders are aware that they are role models. So if you want to be an excellent time manager, one of the psychological techniques you can use, as we discussed right at the beginning, is to imagine that everyone is watching you. Imagine that you are setting the standard and that everybody's going to manage their time the way you manage yours. Ask yourself this question. What kind of a company would my company be if everybody in it managed their time just like me? What kind of a family would my family be if everybody used their time in it just like me? And always be asking yourself, as an example, would your world be a better or superior world if everybody did just what you did? The superior person thinks about this all the time. The inferior person puts this aside and refuses to deal with it. Now, the 13th key in developing a philosophy of time management is the importance of balance. The importance of balance, which means the importance of moderation. The Greeks said that moderation in all things is the key to a happy life. Moderation. Now, sometimes people say, well, I don't have time for my family. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time for this and time for that. Whenever you find yourself getting out of sync with regard to balance, and especially when you feel that you don't have the time, is when you most need to stop and think. So here's the question to ask. What would I do if I only had 6 months to live? If you find yourself working too hard or not spending time in your relationships, not spending time with the people you care about and who care about you, then ask yourself, what would I do if I only had 6 months to live? And if what you would do is you'd spend more time with the important people in your life, the time to start spending that time is now. So what would you do if you had 6 months to live? You know, it's an old joke that doctors say is that they never met a businessman on his deathbed who said, boy, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. The fact of the matter is that balance and moderation in all things increases your productivity, increases your efficiency. And remember, the only reason you're working is so that you can enjoy the great things of life, which are your people, your relationships, the things that make you happy, and so on. Number 14, which brings us to that, is that relaxing, letting go, vacations are a wonderful use of time, is that you need to recuperate. You need to recharge your batteries. So one of the smartest things to do at the beginning of the year is plan all of your vacations in advance. Send them the money. Book the travel facilities and the hotel facilities. Book your vacations in advance and schedule your work around your vacations. Take 3-day weekends whenever possible. Take a week or 2 weeks off in the summer and the winter time, but learn to relax. Also, learn to exercise. Exercising is a valuable use of your time. The more you exercise, the healthier you are, the more energy you have, the more creative you are, and the more capable you are of doing better work when you work. Number 15, make sure that your goals and your values are congruent. Make sure that you're doing the things every day that you love to do. Make sure that you're doing things that you care about and that what you're doing every day makes you happy. Number 16, have regular health exams. Remember that your health is one of the most important parts of your life. Get regular dental checkups, get regular physical checkups. Number 17, eat lightly. Eat light lunches, eat light dinners. You'll have more energy, you'll be less drowsy, and you'll be more productive. Number 18, make a decision to live to be 80. This is perhaps the most important single part of a philosophy of time management, is that you make the decision that you're going to live to be 80 years old and that you organize all of the days and hours of your life so that you feel healthy, you feel happy, you feel terrific, and if you do, you will live to be 80 and you'll enjoy every single minute of it.